Okay, Tov, today's daf memtes, but we'll start here on the last few words on memches hamid beis. And the Gemara quotes of Achabar Yaakov. And he has a different interpretation of Rabbi Shmuel, according to which Rabbi Shmuel concedes that the mazik would only pay the value equal to the hezek, meaning there won't be any payment beyond, and not even a suffix payment, beyond the value of the loss, because the mazik is only chayev to compensate the nizak for the loss. And therefore, if the hezek was on what's called an aruga shmeina, he'll pay shmeina. But if it was on a krusha, he will not pay for a shmeina. So therefore, the pasuk is not coming to tell me at all, says Rav Acha, how much he has to pay. He definitely has to pay a set sum, which is the valuation of the loss suffered by the nizak. But rather, the pasuk is coming to teach me what karka, in terms of the tripod level, the three levels of quality of karka, does the mazik have to pay to the nizak. Here on the top of Memtes, the pasuk is talking about Kigon, a scenario in which Haisa idis de nizak kiziburis de mazik. The best of the quality of all the karkos that's owned by the nizak is equal to the lowest quality karka of the mazik. So that means the mazik is in possession of many karkos, ma'ulos, that are on a higher quality level than any of the karkos that the nizak owns. So therefore, even the lowest level, the lowest quality level of the karkos of the mazik is equal to the best level of the karka of the nizak. So now we have the following issue, which is going to be the subject of a machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. What karka, in terms of the three different qualities of karka, is the mazik chayev to pay to the nizak? On the one hand, we could say that he should pay the equal to the best quality of the nizak's karka, but that's equal to the lowest quality of the mazik's karka. So the mazik is going to get away with it. We're going to be lenient on the mazik, and we're going to let him get away with paying what for him, for the mazik, is ziburis, because he's paying the high quality karka of the nizak. The other way of learning it is, on the contrary, let's be more machmir on the mazik, and let's see what's meitav, what's the best quality karka that he owns, and that's what he's going to pay to the nizak, although he'll pay a smaller piece of property. Rabbi Shmuel saw been in nizak shaymina. The mazik has to pay only the karka that's equal to the best of the nizak's karka, which would be the ziburis of the mazik in this case. We cannot force the mazik to pay the nizak from his, meaning the mazik's idis. Rabbi Akiva disagrees, but a mazik shamina. The Torah requires a mazik to pay with idis. He's going to have to pay with the best idis that he owns. And we're going to be more machmir on the mazik. The Gemara asks, my time at the Rabbi Shmuel. What led Rabbi Shmuel to the conclusion that when the Torah requires meitav, it means the best of the qualities of the nizak's karkos? And the answer is Gzeres Shav. Soda Soda. Nemra Soda Lamata. At the end of the pasuk, when the pasuk addresses the question of paying the nezek, compensating the nizak, it says meitav sadeu, hu meitav karmo yishalim. And we're going to emphasize the word sadeu. V'nemra Soda Lamala. At the beginning of the pasuk, when the pasuk is addressing the Masechet, it says v'shilach es be'iro uvir b'stei acher. Again, the word b'stei. Now, when the Torah is describing how the animal of the mazik went in and consumed the peros of the sada here is that of the nizak. No question about that. Is therefore through this Gzeres Shava, ma sada mur lamala de nizak. So we're talking about the sada the nizak. Af sada mur lamata, when the Torah says meitav sadeu, it's the nizak, it's the sada of the nizak. So how does Rabbi Akiva counter against this drasha of Rabbi Yishmael? Rabbi Akiva Savar, the pasuk is not coming to be mekel on the mazik so that he can pawn off his ziburis when they're worth they're the same quality as the idis of the nizak, but rather it's coming to teach us that the mazik has to pay from the mazik's best quality karka, to be machmir on the mazik. And we're interpreting the pasuk meitav sadei yishalim kipshuto, and it means the heich to come yishalim, right? The Torah says yishalim, and that's referring obviously to the mazik, and then it says meitav sadei yishalim. So obviously the sadeu is referring to the mazik, and he has to fork over the best quality karka that he has for Rabbi Yishmael. What is Rabbi Yishmael going to answer? There is the pshuto shel mikra, even if you have a gzeres shava, but you still need to size up and answer up to the pshuto shel mikra. It says meitav sadeu yishalim. Yishalim is referring to the sada of the mazik. Rabbi Yishmael cannot be oblivious to that. My answer is ahani gzeres shava ahani kra. Rabbi Yishmael is going to create an integration of both the Gzeres Shava of Sada and the Pasuk Kipshuto. How so? How do both operate in tandem? Ahani Gzeres Shava Lichra Moron, that if the lowest quality karka of the mazik is equal to the highest quality of the karka of the nizak, he pays from the lowest quality, meaning the nizak shayminon. Vahani kra, the pasuk pshat in the pasuk seems to indicate that the meitav refers to the karkos of the mazik. We need that to teach us the isle la mazik idis viziburis. In a case where the mazik owns two karkos, two qualities or categories of karkos, that's all he has. He's got idis and ziburis. V'ziburis didei lo shavya ki idis de nizak. The situation is such that if you have three levels, we'll call them going from the best to the worst. A, which is idis, B, which is betadis, and C, which is ziburis, then the karkos of the nizak fit into category number B, which means they're of a higher quality than the mazik's ziburis, but of a lower quality than the mazik's idis. If you have that picture in your mind, so you've got the mazik and you have the nizak. The mazik has two karkos, idis and ziburis, and the nizak has beinanis, which is superior in quality to that of the ziburis of the mazik, but inferior in quality to the karka idis of the mazik. So in this case, if we only had the Gzeres Shava, we would say that, look, the zchus of the nizak doesn't go beyond the shavyus of the karka that he has, and therefore he cannot collect his nezek from that which is superior to his best quality, to his idis, the nizak's idis. So in the scenario that we described where the mazik does not own, he does not possess karka, which is ke'idis shel nizak, because the idis shel nizak we said was beinanis relative to the mazik. So therefore, we're going to disqualify the karka idis at all. The mazik doesn't have karka idis. All he has is now ziburis. Because again, the idis of the mazik is superior to the best quality karka of the nizak. So therefore, forget about the idis of the mazik. It's way out of range. And therefore, the only thing that the nizak could collect is from the ziburis, which is of an inferior quality to the nizak's idis. And therefore, the pasuk teaches me in this case, the mishalim levi meitav. Here's a case where the mazik has no choice, has no way out other than to pay from his idis. Why? Because it says meitav sadeu yishalim. In what scenario does he pay meitav sadeu? In the scenario where his idis is superior to the idis, which is relative to the mazik beinus of the nizak, we would have said the nizak has to go down one madrega because of the gzeira shava that teaches me that the nizak shaminon, and he'll have to end up with the ziburis of the mazik, which is inferior to his idis, which is beinus. But kamashmal and krod, now we have the simple pshat of the pasuk that the mazik has to pay with his meitav sadeh yishalim, and ola imo vein yored imo, so to speak. And he's going to have to pay with idis, even though it's superior to that of the nizak. So let's say, for example, if the mazik would own idis and beinus, and his beinus, the mazik's beinus is equal to the idis of the nizak, in such a case, the mazik would only pay beinus, which is his beinus, but relative to the nizak, it's his idis. And the reason for that is, but in nizak shaymin, according to Rabbi Shmuel, based on the gzeira shava. However, in a case where the mazik doesn't own that beinus that's superior to the idis of the nizak, then we're going to apply the pshuta shel mikra, and meitav sadeh means that the mazik will have to fork over his idis, even though it's superior in quality to the best of the quality of the karkos of the nizak. Rabbi Rhodes, I have to apologize about one thing. There's no way under the sun I can teach this daf in 1 hour. I've been spending hours and hours on this daf. I just physically can't do it. So when the hour ends, you'll make your decision that based on your schedule, what action you have to take. I'm going to just have to go on. If a miracle happens, I'll finish this daf within an hour. It's just an incredibly complicated daf. And I'm just afraid of daf nun because I think it's even worse. It's amazing that we're not really learning Gittin at all. We're learning Nezikin. Anyway, let's go on. Now we have in the Brisa the sheet of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva Omer, lo ba kosuv el ligvos lenezikin mina idis. And we said that with regard to Nezikin, we're going to have to analyze what's the status of Hegdesh. And that's going to go in 2 different ways. We're going to have a Hedjot that was Mazik Hegdesh, or the other way around, Hegdesh was Mazik Hedjot. So Rabbi Akiva says that the collection of Nizakin has to be Mina Idis. We're going to be Machmir on the Mazik. And that's going to be derived from a Kal V'chomer. And that's going to be the basis for a Kal V'chomer to Hegdesh. Now, the Gemara is going to go through 2 different understandings of the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. At this particular juncture, the Gemara understands Rabbi Akiva as assuming that just like with regard to Nezikin, the din of Hegdesh has to be chamur relative to the din of hedjot. And right now, we're not talking about a case of a person who was magdish his field to hegdesh, and then we have to determine what quality of karka would be a fulfillment of his neder. But rather, we're talking about nizakin of hegdesh. So the Gemara asks the following: My kal v'chomer lehegdesh. In what scenario did Rabbi Akiva formulate a kal v'chomer to nezke hegdesh? If we're talking about a case where the shor of a hedjot was nogeach the shor of hegdesh, and Rabbi Akiva says that the mazik of hegdesh will have to pay with the idis of his karkos, because keep in mind, Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion of bit of mazik shaminon. This is impossible, because the pasuk says ki yigo shor ish eshor re'eu, etc. And Chazal darshan, based on this pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim, that re'eu, that only if his shor was nogech the shor re'eu, Omar Achmana, then the Torah says he has to pay. Shalom yishalom. But velo shor shel hegdesh, if a shor of hedjot was nogech a shor shel hegdesh, he's potur. And basically, this applies as a universal rule to any nezik with the hedjot incurs the mazik of hegdesh. He's potur. So you can't tell me that based on a kal v'chomer, you're going to derive how exactly the mazik has to pay the hegdesh, because the mazik doesn't pay hegdesh. Based on the pasuk re'eu. Elo, we have no choice, but we have to reinterpret Rabbi Akiva. And we're not talking about Nezikin at all, because again, to say a kal v'chomer to hegdesh, that the mazik hegdesh has to pay with idis, makes no sense, because the hegdesh is pottering answer. But rather, we're talking about a neder. Well, Omer, a person took upon himself a neder, harei mono lebedek habayis. Now, he didn't explicitly say that he's going to pay karka to bedek habayis to hegdesh. He took upon himself a certain sum of money, let's say 100, but nevertheless, he doesn't have any liquid assets. All he has to pay up his neder to bedek habayis is karka. And here's where the sheet of Rabbi Akiva and his kal v'chomer is going to come to the fore. The Asi Gizbar Vikshakel Idis. If the noder has different qualities of karka, the hegdesh has a right to collect the idis, the best of his karka. And that's a kal v'chomer, because if a person was mazik his friend's shor, then he would pay from his, meaning the mazik's, finest quality idis of karka. And so too, when he's paying up a neder to hegdesh, we have to be at least as machmir in hegdesh, if not more, than we were on a mazik, and therefore let him pay, and let the gizbar representing hegdesh collect from the idis the best quality of the karka of the noder. Now, the Shita Megubetzes in Bava Kama Daf Vav quotes a kasha from Rabbi Yeshaya. The Gemara has a principle at the beginning of Bava Kama that if any of the following four words appear in the Torah, then the halacha is that you have to pay from Meitav. Tachas, Nesina, Yeshalem, Kesef. We're going to emphasize the word Yeshalem. So Rabbi Yeshaya asks the following question. With regard to Hegdesh, the Torah says in Dvarim Chav Gimel, in Parshas Kitei, say ki sidar neder, if you take a neder to Hegdesh, lo si acher l'shalmo. And the word l'shalmo, therefore, should teach me that you have to pay Hegdesh to fulfill your neder with Meitav. So why do I need this kal v'chomer from Hedjot? And Rabbeinu Yeshaya answers that Gzeira Shava, which is Tachas Nesina Yishalem Kesef, was only formulated and it only applies when Bezdin are collecting a chov. But in the case of a person who takes an neder to Hegdesh, Bezdin doesn't collect a neder. Los achel shama means that the noder, has to come forward on his own to pay up his neder, and therefore the Gzeir Shava does not apply. So now the Gemara raises the following objection: Lo yehei ela balchov, ubalchov dino bebenis. When a person takes upon himself a neder that he will pay Hegdesh Hamona, he becomes a balchov. He becomes like a lov who borrowed money from a malva. And the malva could only collect, as our Mishnah formulates it here at the beginning of Perek HaNizokim, from Beinanis. So how could Rabbi Akiva derive from a Kal V'chomer that when Hegdesh collects the mana in Karka from the Nodir, they're going to collect it from Idis? If you're basing yourself on the laws of a mazik, then a mazik pays from Beinanis. Well, actually, I should correct myself. We're not really talking about a mazik here, because a mazik pays from Idis, but we're talking about a balcho. So that in the case of a noder, he's not a mazik. He didn't do anything to destroy property of Hegdesh. He's chayav to Hegdesh because of his neder. So he's a balcho. He's like a lover who owes a chov to the malva, and therefore he should be paying from Beinanis. And if you'll answer the Kosav Rabbi Akiva, balchov shakal be'idis k'nezikin, that Rabbi Akiva disagrees with our Mishnah, and he holds that when a malva collects from the lova, he collects from idis, like nezikin, where the nizak collects from the mazik's idis. And now we can justify Rabbi Akiva's Kal V'chomer, because if in a case of a balchov you collect from idis, the malva collects from the idis of the lov. How much more so when Hegdesh is collecting the chov of the noder, they have rights to collect from idis. So the Gemara rejects this answer, and the Gemara is going to prove that even if Rabbi Akiva would be holding that a balchov collects from idis, equal mifrach, there's still a pircha on the Kal V'chomer, and we're back to square one. Why? Because mala balchov shekein yipa kocho b'nezikin. The case of a balchov is that of a hedjot, meaning a lova hedjot took out a loan from a malva. And even if you're going to tell me that the malva now collects with idis, that's because yafa kocho b'nezikin, because the status of a hedjot is a very strong status. When he collects his chov, in the case, for example, of nezikin, he collects, and we're talking about the nizak, he collects from the mazik's idis. So that even if you insist that a balchov collects from idis, it's going to be based on the yibui koach of nezikin, where the nizak collects from the mazik's idis. So therefore, where's your basis for a Kal V'chomer? Tomer behegdish shekein hura kochu b'nezikin. Since we derive from Re'eu that if the shorshel hedjot was no geach, a shorshel hegdish, he doesn't pay, he's completely exempt. So therefore, there's no yipui koach in nezikin. On the contrary, there's hura kochu b'nezikin. And now the Gemara is going to go back to the table and analyze the case of a shorshel hedjot shenogach shorshel hegdish. Olam, we're going to go back to our original understanding of Rabbi Akiva, and we're talking about nezikin, not a noder. The nachei Torah didan l'Torah de hegdish. Our shor was no get the shor of hegdish. You had the drush of Re'eu to tell you that you're partus. How can you tell me, well, you have to pay damages to hegdish with idis based on a Kal V'chomer? How could that be? You don't pay it all. Rabbi Akiva Savalak Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya. And Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya is going to say the following, that when the Torah says Re'eu, it's telling you that in Hegdesh, all these distinctions between Chatzi Nezek and Nezek Sholem, between a short tam and a short mu'ah, don't apply to Hegdesh. Isanya Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Omer Shoshel Hegdesh Nogach L'Shoshel Heged Potter. Fine, we'll leave that on the side. What's relevant to us now is the next view or ruling of Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. V'shal Hejod Shenogach L'Shoshel Hegdesh. Are we chayav to pay damages to Hegdesh? And the answer is that from Re'eu, we're going to determine that even if the shar of the Hejot that attacked the shar of the Hegdesh was a shar tam, about which the Torah says, Chatzi nezek yishalem, bein b'shar tam, bein b'shar mud, mishalem nezek shalem. So the Drosh of Shar Re'eu is telling me that with regard to shar shal Hegdesh, there's no distinction between nezek shalom and chatzi nezek, meaning it's an all or nothing proposition. Either you pay the entire hezek, or there's no payment at all, which means that if the shoshal hegdesh was no geach, a shoshal hejot, there's no payment, and hegdesh is completely exonerated from paying the zikin. If, on the other hand, a shoshal hejot was no geach, a shoshal hegdesh, and he pays nezek shalom, even on the first round, even though he's a short time. And now we can begin to understand the Kal Vachomer of Rabbi Akiva, that a hejot that was mazik hegdesh has to pay from idis. So the Gemara asks the following kasha: if Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe that hejot whose magdish hegdesh is chayav nezek sholem even on the first negicha, is mimai to be idis the nizak kiziburis the mazik pligi. How do you know at all that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael are arguing about whether the nizak collects from the mazik's idis or only for the mazik's ziburis? Dilma, perhaps even Rabbi Akiva agrees to Rabbi Yishmael, the Kuli Alma bin Nizak Shamina. We're not going to be machmir on the mazik as we understood Rabbi Akiva originally, but rather we'll be makel on the mazik and allow him to pay ziburis because that's equal to the idis of the nizak. And so then you'll ask me, so what is the stei akrav? Where is there a debate and a controversy between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel? Hacha beplukta de Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Rabbanan k'michlugi. They're only arguing about the issue of whether or not a shar shal hejot shenogach shar shal hegdesh is chayav. Rabbi Akiva sover Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, and the shar shal hejot that was no gech, a shar shal hegdesh has to pay nezek sholim on the first round, and then Rabbi Akiva is going to determine, based on a kal vachomer, that the owner of the shar shal hejot, the mazik, will pay with idis. And that's going to be derived from a kal vachomer because we have a halach of idis in the case of nizik. And again, it's not a super duper chumrah because we're only going to take the idis of the nizak, but that also is a chumrah of meitav sadeu yishaleh. And Rabbi Akiva agrees to Rabbi Shmuel, based on the Gzeira Shava, that we're going to do a shuma on the idis of the nizak, but nevertheless the Torah is requiring idis and kal vachomer in the case of hegdesh, because we're holding now Rabbi Akiva accepts Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, and shor shel hejot shehizik shor shel mazik pays nezek shalom, he pays from idis. Rabbi Shmuel sover Rabbanan, he holds that the pasuk Re'eu is coming to exclude any chiyuv tashluim whatsoever in the case of a shoshal hejot shenogach shoshal hegdesh. Therefore, Rabbi Shmuel doesn't address at all the issue of a hejot who is mazik hegdesh. What karka does he pay? Is it idis, beinin, is zibur, whatever it is? It's all irrelevant because there's no chiyuv tashluim at all. So now the Gemara has reduced the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva to the issue of Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe and Rabban about whether shoshal hejot is chayav for being mazik shoshal hegdesh. And the Gemara says, if that be the case, then there are three words in Rabbi Akiva's formulation that make no sense. Because you're telling me now that Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Shmuel, are makil on the mazik to let him get away with paying the idis of the nizak, which is equal to the ziburis of the mazik. Why did Rabbi Akiva say lo ba kosuv? The words lo ba kosuv indicate that we're coming not to be makil like Rabbi Shmuel did, but rather to be machmer on the mazik and force the mazik to pay up with his idis. So we have to assume, and we have no choice in the matter, Rabbi Akiva rejects Rabbi Yishmael, and he holds that Meitav Sadeh means Meitav Sadeh shall mazik, Yipshuto shall mikra, in every single scenario. The Ode, and now the Gemara is going to offer two other proofs that Rabbi Akiva is machmer on the mazik, and even if the mazik's ziburis equals the idis of the nizak, nevertheless the mazik has to cough up his idis, meitav karma. My kavachomer lehegdesh. Because if you don't assume that we were machmir, according to Rabbi Akiva, on the mazik to force him to pay his idis, then what's kavachomer lehegdesh? Where do we find a chumrah in mazik? If we're going to assume, like Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva accepted Rabbi Yishmael were being makel on the mazik, in a classic case where Ruvain Shar was mazik Shimon Shar, so then we're going to have to assume that what? That through the Kal V'chomer should be makel on the mazik who's mazik hegdesh? That's the exact opposite of Rabbi Akiva's conclusion. We're saying that that according to Rabbi Akiva, like Reb Shimon ben Menashe, the mazik hegdesh, we're going to be machmir more than a mazik of hejot. We're going to force him to pay nezek shalem on the first round. And now you're telling me that we were makil, and even Rabbi Akiva accepted, embraced Rabbi Shmuel's shita of bidin nizak shayminon. The Od and a third proof, ha'amar of Ashi, Tanya Behej.